Welcome to the Steroids Podcast with your host, Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Boom! Boom! Let's get started here. The Steroids Podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Guide to Roids, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Now, for the first time in bodybuilding history, you have someone with no corporate interests and no obligation to please anyone, not walking on eggshells to not offend. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the information, the whole truth, not a full truth and a half truth, full truth. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the keys to the Lamborghini, gives you the information, and lets you decide what to do with it. It's a crime this information has been suppressed this long. Now let's get on with the podcast.
Welcome back to the next episode of the Steroids Podcast. It's your host here, Dan. I wanted to first point out that the demographics of people that are using steroids and who are listening to this podcast, usually between 20 to 65 years old. So if there are those of you who are like 50 years old, who are 60 years old, and you're wondering like, am I the only person doing this? Like, no, you're not at all. There's a huge quantity of people, especially in their 50s, taking steroids. It definitely starts once 60 has been reached. There's definitely less at that point, but there still are. A considerable amount of people. And when I say that, I mean, I'm talking about guys who are doing more than TRT. That's what I'm talking about. Because, of course, there are guys 70 years old, 80 years old who are taking TRT, yeah. But I'm talking about, like, guys who are, like, taking steroid cycles and stuff, like, trying to do, like, bodybuilding to some degree. Those are the ages that I see involved with it. Definitely, probably mid-20s or late 20s to 40 years old being like the peak amount. Like that's probably where the most people who are steroid users or performance enhancing drug users are. But it does go into the absolutely 40s, absolutely 50s, tons of guys through those age groups being pretty serious steroid users is what I see. And then I get questions about, well, what about like maintaining muscle when you go off of steroids or something like that? Because people want to have a plan for what happens after steroids, if you can imagine a steroid-free life. And there's some confusion on like how bodybuilding works, because we have these expectations that get set from the get-go, like before you've taken your first cycle, you'll be reading stuff saying, how much gains can I keep from my first cycle after I stop taking steroids? And, that's completely unrealistic, because somebody who's on a first cycle and does their first cycle and then stops taking steroids, pretty much they go back to where they were. They can stay a little higher, like you hit some strength goals and stuff and you stay you stay a little bit stronger from the cycle and stuff. But for the most part, when you come off steroids, you kind of go back to where you were. And if you really go off steroids completely, that's pretty much the way it works. Like they work when they're in you. And yeah, like after you've built up a lot of muscle and taken a lot of steroids and a lot of growth hormone for a long time, now if you're like on TRT dose testosterone, you can support a great deal more muscle tissue than you could have when you're natural. But when you're on that TRT testosterone, you will not look the way that you did when you were on cycle. So it's not like you were able to maintain the appearance that you had when you were on cycle, but there is a pretty good amount of muscle tissue can be kept under the right conditions on something like 250 milligrams of testosterone per week after somebody has done extensive cycling with steroids or growth hormone. There is a way to be on TRT and not look the same, TRT meaning 1 milliliter per week, and not look the same as you did on cycle, but keep most of the muscular protein tissue that you have in your body so that next cycle when it starts, you can pretty much pick up where the last one left off after 3-week warm-up time or so to get the cosmetic effect and really get the steroids kicking. So recently we have had a bodybuilder who was a big social media steroids and performance enhanced drug user decide to stop using performance enhancing drugs. And so he's on testosterone replacement therapy now. And I do visually see the appearance of testosterone replacement therapy on this man. So I'm not really even just going by what he's saying, but just what I'm seeing, and what he's saying is matching with what I'm seeing. And so that's Chase Irons is the guy's name. And he's a guy who was taking pharmaceutical grade growth hormone above 20 IUs per day for extended periods of time, taking more than 3,000 milligrams of testosterone for extended periods of time, and very high doses of, whatever steroid, you name it. This is one of the guys who was, really going all out with the bodybuilding, and his physique showed it. His physique reflected the compounds and the doses he was using. He looked like a very large, very dense, open type of bodybuilder, using all the stuff that an open type bodybuilder would: acromegaly inducing doses of growth hormone, giant doses of insulin, giant doses of testosterone, trenbolone, etc. And so he looked the part, and he's even doing YouTube and stuff like that. So he's got quite a bit invested into his bodybuilding. But he said that after all that when he was watching his daughter grow up, and once she was not a newborn baby anymore, and she was able to show affection back to him, the kind of effect that had on his mind of being like, hey, I've done this, and I really want to be around, like, for my daughter, or for someone, he loves her, she loves him back, that reciprocal love. So noticing something very important in life, family, what are the things that make a person family? Like, country, religion, country, God, family. So, I interpret that as a good decision that he made, because look, he did the things that bodybuilders do, and he did what it takes to become a huge open type of bodybuilder. And that, when you do that and you then understand what it takes to be a bodybuilder, well, for some there is a degree of some of the mystery gets taken out of it, because that is part of why we want to become like pro bodybuilders, or what we see is because there's a mystique to it. There's a mystery to it. And when you first see it, it's like, man, that's incredible. Like, how is that even possible? Like that's just so far out there. And so it's like that with anybody who has like mastery of any kind of skill that you have. When it's a really at a very high level, it looks like magic to people who are not trained in that, to people who don't know how to do the magic trick. And so bodybuilding is something that did not exist before steroids and performance enhancing drugs. And it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for performance enhancing drugs and steroids. So it needs the performance enhancing drugs and steroids in order to exist. And bigger bodybuilders need more and more performance enhancing drugs and steroids in order to make that happen. So when you do realize that, and then you're a bodybuilder and you're on this stuff and you're taking this stuff and you've got, a lot of muscle size, a lot of strength, where you can be walking around and, the only guys who are going to be able to compare to you are other people who know the secrets and who are doing the same things as you're doing. Other than that, you're not going to meet other people that can compare to you. And you're then going to be like, wow, because what you're doing, and you're gonna, it depends on what kind of guy that you are, though, like if you're a zero sum kind of guy, or if you're the kind of guy who likes everybody to win. Maybe if you're a zero sum, one winner, all losers type of guy. Maybe you do want that. You want you to have a secret, and you want everybody else to not know it, so that you can be up on top or something like that, right? but and when you are at that level, you're going to know that the drugs that you're using, the steroids and performance enhancing drugs that you're using, are essential to maintaining your appearance. They're not optional for maintaining your appearance. You know that you need these things in order to maintain this appearance that you have. And so then you're going to really start to internalize that, wow, bodybuilding is too much about steroids and performance enhancing drugs. And so that really becomes like the reality that, you know, we're all facing anyways as bodybuilders. And that's why we have this stuff, you know, where bodybuilders are saying, I don't take shit when they take shit, or I take more, or I take less when they take more, or whatever, is because these things, you don't want bodybuilding to have to be so dependent on these substances. But that is the point, is that it is dependent on these substances, and it never existed before these substances existed. And so when you do realize that, like, oh, it's so fucking dependent on these substances, that's not that doesn't feel good. And, you know, you can be doing the same things that you're doing already with your training and your diet and your supplements, getting everything in right. But if you reduce or stop taking some of your performance enhancing drugs, your appearance is going to completely start changing and shit. And that's when you see that, like, hey man, this is too reliant on steroids and performance enhancing drugs. And so that's something that we all wish as bodybuilders, is that it wasn't that way, but it is. So that's like a difficult thing to come to terms with. So with Chase Irons and stopping steroids, I'm sure that he got to that point with taking huge dosages of growth hormone, insulin, steroids, where he just went like, look, man, am I still like worthy without pumping my stuff with this every week? Like, you know, I've been here, I've had this muscle and stuff, but do I really have to keep pumping this shit into me on a weekly basis at these extreme levels? Or, you know, have I been there, done that? And now, you know, you can move on and kind of continue going on with your life. There's more to life than just having to take these things at these huge doses indefinitely and being like I'm chained to this. And so that's why I think he made a good decision there. Because I've said this before too, is that bodybuilding should have a start date and an end date. And this is going with the same theme, that it's because it's too dependent on substances. And so then you have to negotiate and be like, okay, well, how can I still do bodybuilding? And really, a lot of guys are still going to want to do bodybuilding. They're going to want to experience the huge body, the huge muscles, the huge strength. And so what you come down to as the solution is that having a start point and an end point to your bodybuilding career, being like, hey, look, I'm going to hit this, and I'm going to hit this hard, and this is going to last 5 years. This is going to last 10 years. This is going to last 15 years. Maybe somebody's even really stretching it, and they're going to last 20, 25 years on heavy steroids. But then, you know, you got to know when to pack it up and to still live the bodybuilding lifestyle, still do the diet, still do the training, still do the supplements, still love the gym and everything. But we're not taking huge amounts of steroids and performance enhancing drugs anymore. You know, we're toning that down and still living the bodybuilding lifestyle. So we're not going to be as big and as freaky and as alien anymore. But hey, we got to experience this and it was really fun, and we still do get to experience it and do it really fun, but it's just not in as in such an extreme way anymore. And so that's how I think that the bodybuilding lifestyle really should be lived, is this more extreme portion where you're really looking like a bodybuilder, have that size like a bodybuilder, got that strength and everything. That's more of like a peaking thing that can happen, you know, probably for most guys over a period of 10 to 20 years. And then really at some point, you should pack it up to a more conservative level as you get older, and Pay more attention to your health and still live the bodybuilding lifestyle. Don't give up on that. Don't give up on the training, the diet, loving going to the gym, liking taking supplements, etc. But just optimize it for other stuff. Optimize it for other stuff. No, max muscle size doesn't have to be the number one goal for your whole life. Yeah, so I'm not trying to shit on getting big and huge and being an alien or a monster or anything like that. But I am trying to explain it or how it happens and everything in a realistic scenario that puts some care into you. Like if you were my friend and I was trying to take care of you while you did this, but still help you to know what you need to do, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. Not trying to take a shit on extreme bodybuilding or anything like that. Just talking about like a well-rounded, full-out life plan for bodybuilding. And so then let's also talk about how to maintain muscle when you've not been taking steroids and growth hormones, etc. And now you're on TRT. And when I say TRT, let's assume that means 1 ml of testosterone enanthate or testosterone cypionate per week. So we're roughly talking about 200 to 250 milligrams of testosterone medium ester per week. And when you are on that level of testosterone and no other performance enhancing drugs, because we're also talking about not being on growth hormone, is your body goes to a different appearance very quickly than when you're on cycle. Like when you get on cycle and you're on some strong steroids, your body, like in 1 week will look significantly different and the shapes of your muscles will be different than than before you were on the cycle. So when you go off cycle and you go on to only TRT, yeah, the same thing happens, but in reverse. And so you lose the cosmetic effects of steroids and you don't have like the muscles pushing up against the skin so much anymore. So specific things that you'll notice is like if you have like round bowling ball deltoids, shoulders, those are going to be going away to some degree when you go on to TRT. And so shoulders are one of those muscles that is extremely steroid dependent, where if you ask somebody, how did you get those shoulders? Really, like probably other than saying, side lateral dumbbell raises, you have to say, well, it's the steroid stack I'm on, because that's how it works is specific steroids, like say anadrol and trenbolone, for example, really give that deltoid look. And it's not really so much about the training as it is about what chemicals you have in your body to get the look in the deltoids. But anyways, back to keeping muscle. So the main thing is that you have to understand and accept that you're not going to look the same way as you did when you were on cycle and be like, oh, okay, well, like, you remember how when I didn't have the cosmetic effect of steroids, how my muscles weren't like popping up against my skin so much, like pressing out against them and everything. And you're going to be like, yeah, well, so you don't, when your muscle size goes down and you don't have that cosmetic effect of steroids anymore, don't include that as like, I just lost muscle, because it's really the protein tissue that is the muscle. And then this other stuff is like fuel that stays in it. And a muscle that is depleted versus a muscle loaded with fuel looks completely different. And the real thing that keeps the protein muscle tissue there, and that's the kind of muscle that when you do get on cycle, it blows back up again. So after you've built up a lot of this protein tissue muscle from doing this for a long time, when you come off and then you go back on again, you look like you gain like 15 to 20 pounds of muscle in like 1 week when you go back on again, because your muscles start sucking up all this fuel again where you were like depleted from cruising. And when you are going to be on TRT and you're going to be maintaining muscle, the number one factor that makes you retain that type of protein muscle tissue is the tension that muscle feels on a regular basis. So as far as like preventing muscle loss and like what kind of training really works for this, you have to give the muscle and your nervous system, really, because your nervous system is highly integrated with your weightlifting. And so the nervous system feels what the muscles are going through and then takes action to adapt to the body to that. And so when you have this heavy tension from weightlifting and your muscle is feeling that, basically a stretch, when it's feeling a stretch with resistance, which is the eccentric movement of weightlifting. Imagine going down to your chest with a bench press or down to the floor on squats. When you are feeling that movement and the muscle is experiencing that tension, that is giving the muscle, when it's with the heavy weight, like the one that you were using on cycle, that is giving the muscle a signal that is saying, look, if I decrease my mass, if I decrease the amount of myself that there is, I'm going to be in danger. I'm going to be in danger of tearing my muscles. I'm going to be in danger of getting injured. This is the kind of stimulus that when you send this stimulus to your body, it says, look, I'm not getting rid of muscle. I'm getting rid of any other tissue that the body has first. And the muscle is going to be the part that, it is not going to be burned for metabolic reasons, because we need this, or else there's going to be a catastrophic failure. We're going to get hurt. This is the message that you send to your body by doing heavy compound lifting when you are trying to maintain muscle, when you're on a cruise, when you're on a health phase. So trying to hit the sets that you hit on cycle really works good, because strength does go down a bit when you go off cycle, but you do keep a lot of it. But usually that strength is only good for 1, 2, maybe 3 sets per workout. And then after that, it's spent. Whereas on steroids, you can usually use that weight, for maybe 5 to 8 sets or something, before you're spent. So you can do a lot more volume with that weight, which helps with building up the muscle. But just doing a set where you experience that tension, even just that one time, where it puts where your nervous system knows, look, if I take any of this muscle off, I'm going to be in danger of getting hurt. That's the stimulation that just locks the muscle onto the body. And when you're on a cruise, or when you are say you're finished doing heavy extreme steroid use and now you just want to stay on TRT and maintain as much muscle as you can, just doing the compound lifts and doing them heavy and then trying to do them frequently is what really keeps on a huge amount, like an underrated amount of muscle, more muscle than you're expecting to be able to keep on by training that way. And so you're not going to have that many sets where you've got your strength. And so what's going to end up being the winning ticket is high frequency, low volume training on compound lifts. So making your body feel those resistance or those amounts of tension on a regular basis, and then doing it frequently. So the heavy lifting frequently, compound lifts, not a lot of volume in your workouts. And then as long as you keep using those compound lifts for those pretty heavy weights on a regular basis, your body keeps on getting that signal that they're, losing muscle is just not an option. And you maintain pretty good. Yeah, you're not going to look the way you do when you're on a cycle. And you can know that all these guys that say, I'm on 250 test, and they look like they're on everything, and they're like, I'm cruising, I'm on 250 test or something. That's bullshit. That's not what it looks like when you go to a cruise. But you can hold on to a lot of muscle. Okay, let's get on to some questions. Eddie asks, I've done a number of cycles in the past. I'm 46 years old. I've read your ebook, Ultimate Guide to Roids, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand, and I've done the phone call consultation with you, etc. I'm currently on nothing, no gear at all, not even TRT, but I have a decent amount of Dbol left over from a previous cycle. This may be stupid, but I've been dabbling with 50 milligrams 1 hour pre-workout twice a week, just to give my heavier lift days some extra pep. It feels great and gives me a modest boost. Also seems to give me a better mood throughout the day. I know this isn't going to lead to amazing cycle gains, but is there any harm in it? Do you think 50 milligrams twice a week could negatively affect health or interfere with natural test production? I plan on doing a proper cycle in February, and then I'll get back on TRT because I hate life without roids. Okay, so you're using 50 milligrams Dbol pre-workout twice a week. And other than that, you're just totally natural. Been using steroids in the past. And now you're doing this, which is kind of like an experiment for you, it sounds like, and you're liking it. And so you're asking, is there any side effects or are you cool to continue? And so as far as like toxicity, you should be cool to continue. I don't see any toxicity effect from taking Dbol twice a week at 50 milligrams. That shouldn't be a problem. So what it is doing though is when you take Dbol, it has a major effect on reducing natural testosterone production. And so that's partly because it's androgenic, but it's mostly because of how estrogenic Dbol is. And when estrogen is in the bloodstream, there's a sensor in the brain that knows how much estrogen is in the bloodstream. And when the estrogen level gets high enough, it turns off testosterone production because natural testosterone production is not managed by your body sensing how much of the male hormone is in your blood. It senses how much of the female hormone is in your blood because the more testosterone you have, the more aromatization you get. And so your body uses that as a measuring stick for how much testosterone you have. It uses the estrogen as that. So AIs, or just like Arimidex, exemestane, etc., these are actually effective PCT drugs to some degree in restarting natural testosterone production, because if you block estrogen production, that blocks that sensor that prevents testosterone production. So that's the main reason why taking Dbol, which is a huge estrogen bomb to your body. It's an huge estrogen thing. It's very suppressive of natural testosterone. Dbol, very suppressive to natural testosterone production. So I do think that taking that is going to interfere with your body's, even just 50 milligrams twice a week, I think that's going to interfere with your body's ability to produce natural test, especially being a former steroid user. I think you'll still have some testosterone. I don't think you'll have zero natural testosterone. And I also think that with the Dbol, if you feel any need for it, using an aromatase inhibitor would also be wise. And then you say you're planning on doing a proper cycle in February, which I guess it's there now, and you'll get back on TRT because you hate life without roids. Thanks, Eddie. Well, it sounds like you know what you got to do. All right, next question is from Pat. Hey, Dan, longtime listener of your podcast and have your Bible Ultimate Guide to Roids, too. It's definitely a must. I'm 46 years old, 5'7", 83 kilograms, Australian, and I've been using PEDs for about 3 years. I'm usually pretty conservative and just run my 12-week cruise at 250 milligrams test E over twice per week. Oh, okay, he divides the dose at 0.5 milliliter twice per week. When he blasts 12 weeks, he doubles it to 500 milligrams test and adds an oral to kickstart or trenbolone and anthate, and usually matches the trenbolone milliliter for milliliter with his test. His question is, he's about to do another 12-week blast, 500 test with 400 tren, was thinking of throwing in Masteron E at 500 milligrams per week total with it, injecting on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Do you think this is any good, or would you change it? Okay, so 12 weeks with the regular 500 testosterone, and now you're putting in 400 trenbolone and also thinking about doing 500 Masteron with it. So that'll work good. That's the classic cut stack. So test, tren, Masteron. And so trenbolone does give like a training intensity boost. like a mental boost. It does something to your brain where you can't train as hard off of it as you can train on of it. It turns you into an animal to some degree in the gym and activates neural networks that make your muscles just be able to contract harder. It's crazy stuff. You know, Trenbolone is some crazy stuff. So that's what it does. And you know, then Masteron, you have to think about like what is the main thing with Masteron, and like the main thing with Masteron in a cutting cycle is probably the energy that it helps to give you in a similar way to Trenbolone, that helps you to power through workouts and get intense workouts when you're not eating a lot and you don't feel strong and you don't feel any energy. Because Masteron does give this stimulant effect. And yeah, it does. You do feel it when you're in the gym, like in your brain. And you definitely do feel Masteron majorly, like in your brain, in your skin, in your prostate. And then like a major sex drive boost too. So the two things that happen to a lot of people when they're dieting and they're really low on food is sex drive goes just gone. If you're dieting hard, like really dieting, and it's like low carbs and stuff, like, you know, sex drive, just zero sex drive. And then another thing is usually getting those hard, intense, extreme workouts in the gym when you're like that, and you're lightheaded and dizzy and shit like that, is really hard. So, you know, the Masteron is helping with those aspects. So that's what I really interpret Masteron as doing, is being an aid. It's an aid when you're on a diet. Yeah, there is some diuretic effects to it too. So that's what you're going to be getting out of Masteron, though. I want it because you said you've already done Test and Tren. And so I wanted, and you're saying you're thinking about adding Masteron 500 milligrams per week. So I wanted to be clear about expectations and what adding Masteron would do to the cycle. So one thing it's not going to do is it's not going to like burn all your fat off of you or like make you ripped or something like that. Actually, the Trenbolone is going to be much better than the Masteron at those effects. So yeah, I mean, it's a good blast. And, you know, we talked about the Test Tren Masteron stack and why it's like a classic go-to for bodybuilding contests and everything. It works really good. And then, you know, one thing too with Masteron is that sometimes people get tired from taking orals, but since Masteron doesn't have any liver toxicity, you can still get that workout stimulant effect on it, similar to like what orals give you, that workout stimulant effect. But, you know, you're not accumulating toxicity and getting tired, which could also be a plus if somebody who was like on a contest prep cycle or on a heavy cut, you know, they don't have to be on a contest prep cycle, you know, just a heavy cut. Maybe they want to take a picture. Maybe they want to go on a beach trip. They want to look really, really good for it. Anyway, so let's move on to the next question. Okay. Ben asks, I'm trying to focus on my health after blasting and cruising for 9 years. 2 years off now, low calorie diet, only cardio, and on 90 milligrams testosterone and enanthate per week. I'm still 8 kilograms heavier than my identical twin brother. What could this weight be? I've shrunk to pretty much normal size. Echocardiogram shows my heart is normal and I never used HGH or insulin. Biggest cycle was 600 tests, 700 tren, 50 milligrams anadrol, 20 milligrams superdrol. I want to be as light as possible for health purposes, and I just don't understand how I'm still so much heavier than him, even though we are both 5'9". 8 kilograms, which is 15 pounds approximately, seems a huge difference at that weight. Wanted to send this podcast into progress if you knew where this undroppable weight is. Okay, so you stopped lifting and you reduced your testosterone a lot. So those are the main things that really start dropping muscle. Reducing the testosterone, you know, lower than 1 milliliter per week. So like 90 milligrams or something like this guy. And then not weightlifting anymore. And now if you combine that with a weight loss diet where you have the testosterone low, you're not lifting, and you're on a weight loss diet that has low carbs, low insulin, because insulin is pretty consequential in keeping your muscle as well. You're going to start losing muscle at that point. Like that's the general formula for losing muscle when you have already been on steroids is drop the steroids to 100 milligrams of testosterone per week, drop the carbs, and lose body weight and don't lift weights, and the muscle just starts flying off of your body. So with you though, you're saying that, let's just pretend you've done most of that stuff, and you're saying, why are you different than your twin brother? And so there are permanent changes that happen from doing extreme weightlifting, gym, etc., that involves performance enhancing drugs. So especially when you've been doing it for a long time. When you've been doing it for a short period of time, this is not as extreme as an effect at all. But when you've been on this for years, your muscles, muscle cells are weird. They develop more than one nucleus in the muscle cell. And the bigger that they get, the bigger the muscle cell actually gets and the more nucleus DNA sites that the muscle cell has in it. And this does not go away ever. Once you develop this from long-term steroid use and heavy weightlifting, massive strength gains, etc., these changes that happen internally inside of your muscles stay with you for the rest of your life. You can cut a cadaver's muscle who has used anabolic steroids for an extended period of time and someone who has not, and they've both been weightlifting, and you can cut the muscles out and look at them under a microscope. Just under a microscope, because all you're looking for is the nucleus, okay? So it's like not even that hard to see this stuff. And there is more DNA, more nucleus in the muscle cells of the guy who was using steroids. So that what I'm trying to tell you is that when you take steroids and growth hormones, your body is changed permanently to some degree. Like specifically your muscles are changed permanently to some degree. They are now going to have information about them stored in them, about how big and how strong they were. And this is why also muscle memory is such a potent thing with steroid users. If you see somebody who has used steroids and made big gains before and then lost it, and then starts taking steroids again, they can literally be putting on like 1 pound of muscle a day. And maybe that isn't protein, maybe a half a pound of it is like protein, but it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable stuff can happen when you see how fast a former steroid user can make a comeback with huge amounts of muscle and strength. And so that's what you've got. You've got this 8 kilograms heavier than him. And, 600 tests, 700 tren, 50 androdrol, 20 superdrol. That's not mild at all. That's very strong. You don't have high numbers, but your 700 tren, you multiply that by 5 to get the strength compared to testosterone. So you were taking 700 trends, so that compares to 3,500 milligrams of testosterone. Plus you were taking 600 testosterone, and you're taking anadrol and superdrol, et cetera. So like your real gear number is over like 5,000 milligrams per week. So you were a heavy user, you're a heavy steroid user. And so now you've got, your muscles have changed. You wonder, why aren't you the same as your twin brother? Well, if you cut pieces of your muscle out and looked at your muscle and looked at your brother's muscle, the insides of your muscles wouldn't look the same. Your muscle is composed differently now than his, and it's going to be that way for the rest of your life unless he decides that he wants to follow your path. But you can see that, it was 8 kilograms. It was not 30 kilograms. It was not 50 kilograms. And, that you don't look the same now, now that you're not on this stuff, though, even if you are heavier, you don't look the same that you did when you were on the steroids. You look, since you're not on it anymore, you look like natural now, even if you are bigger. So these are some interesting things to notice and talk about. Question from Scott. Hi, Dan. Love the podcast on real transparency. For the podcast, been on Testy 300 milligrams for 20 plus weeks now. Never ran it this long in my life, but have felt that good. I didn't even realize. So he was on Testy 300 for more than 20 weeks and felt great and lost track of time. His concern now is that it's too late to come off completely, as in, will it even be possible to come off? Or will it be possible best to drop to the TRT dose? Sounds like some kind of hoping for me to have a certain answer here. But no, if you've been on for over 20 weeks, it's definitely not like, oh, your testicles are just goners and they're never going to come back. No way, man. No way. 20 weeks isn't long enough for anything like that. So, you're going to, I mean, if you want to just keep on using testosterone, because that's what it sounds to me like listening to your message is you're kind of wanting to stay on it because you said you liked it so much and you're like, will it even be possible? You lost track of time, etc. So, so you could do that, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But if you want to be natural again, you definitely sure as hell can be. I mean, you'd probably be okay with just taking Nolvadex and Clomid like 50-20, something like that for a month, and you'll be all right. HCG is really like, that's the best PCT drug. So if you take HCG with that, with the Nolva and Clomid, I mean, you're going to recover quickly and you're going to be producing high natural testosterone levels within a month or less. And yeah, I mean, you might have to take Nolvadex for like a few more months in order to maintain that before your body completely kicks in on its own again like it was before. But like permanent shutdown from 20 weeks of taking testosterone, it's just not happening. Your levels are certainly lower, but not happening. Permanent shutdown. Okay, next question from Ellis. As you get older, thoughts on simply doing a permanent cruise, a perma cruise, and use HGH as the main firepower. Then, and cycle in orals when you want some cosmetic polish. Example, run testosterone 200 milligrams year-round plus another 1 or 200 of whatever you enjoy for lifestyle. Example, Deca for joints, Equipoise or Masteron for well-being, cycled through the year. HGH 3 to 5 IUs or as much as you want to spend. I'm 50 and this method is working well compared to blast and cruise without the ups and downs. Yeah, I talked to a considerable amount of guys who are in that age range, 50 plus, who have come to some sort of program like what you're doing and feel good on that and want to continue it indefinitely. I see that being a regular thing for guys at that age group. And it makes sense. Like there's logic to that. Now, if I was going to say, like, do I think that the health effects of doing that, like taking what you could say, I guess, an enhanced TRT, 3 to 5 IUs of growth hormone plus 100 to 200 milligrams of whatever steroid you want, and then maybe an oral a little bit, maybe once a year for 6 weeks or something, and then like 200 test. So it sounds like, okay, we're keeping everything like low, but really like the body doesn't normalize and go to 100% health when you take really anything other than testosterone. Like growth hormone, yeah, it can also handle that, but growth hormone is doing some shit that I don't know if you want to have that high long term. Like for I don't think it's a good idea to be on growth hormone at more than a replacement dose for a long period of time, because the acromegaly effects come from having higher than normal growth hormone periods for extended periods of time. And as the years go on and the duration becomes longer, they start to appear more even on people who have taken lower doses. And the acromegaly definitely shortens your life. So I see 1 to 2 IUs of growth hormone per day being acceptable indefinitely or long term. But doing 3 to 5 IUs of growth hormone per day, I see that as being something that is damaging over an extended period of time. And usually when guys are in this like 50 plus age range, they're looking like health is a big concern. It's a big concern along with anabolics, and then younger guys are more just concerned with anabolics. but yeah, even when you hit 30, you guys, you're gonna stop feeling it so invincible, and the health effects of what you're doing is going to become more important to you. So I think that just going to a regular cruise, which is 200 milligrams of testosterone, that's what I think is the way to go. I think you should stick with that. That's how I do it. That's how I do it. And I believe in cruising on 1 milliliter of testosterone per week, because of the low, very, very low to no toxicity on pretty much every system. I mean, the only system that's really getting on toxicity on that is like your testicles. And other than that, everything's good. And, there can definitely be guys who are 75, 80 years old, taking 200 milligrams testosterone per week through TRT, and that works for them. But do I think that it's going to be some really bad thing, taking 200 test, 100 DECA, and 5 IU growth hormone, and a little bit of orals? No. I think that that's light use. I think that that's light steroid use. I think that's light performance enhancing drug use. And I don't think that that is acutely toxic in ways that makes you have big problems. You need to be taking care of your blood pressure. You need to be taking care of your resting heart rate. And you need to be taking care of your blood sugars. So when you take care of those three things, that decreases your risks quite a lot. In decreasing your blood sugars, the main things for that, staying super insulin sensitive, is that insulin creates inflammation. And so, when you eat a lot of carbs, then that makes you, in the kidneys, retain the sodium. It retains the salt. And then your body has to bring in water to balance that salt. But the first thing that happened was the carbs coming into the body, which made the kidneys start holding the salt, which then makes the body hold the water, which then causes the high blood pressure. And anyways, having the high glucose levels that made the body start holding the salt in the first place, having those high glucose levels in the veins and arteries is what causes inflammation in the veins and arteries, and then plaques to start building up. So you get, heart disease, atherosclerosis. So that's why I'm saying that, these things like blood glucose, you may think it's just about diabetes, but no, it's not actually. It's about heart disease. And then you have other things like resting heart rate and stuff. You might think that that's not important, but if you've gotten a resting heart rate over 80 beats per minute, this is actually a factor that can produce the left ventricular hypertrophy, that can cause the thickening in the heart, that can cause the heart to get larger. Because now, when we have a heart rate that is 80 beats per minute or higher, and that's its resting heart rate, it doesn't get lower than that, our heart is under stress, okay? It's under load, because that's not how it beats when it's not under load. It's slower than that. And so when you've got a heart that is never going off of being loaded, even when you're resting, when you're sleeping, etc., well, that thing starts adapting, that thing starts growing, etc. So I'm not trying to scare you guys, but I'm just trying to really put this together in a way that gives you a really clear picture of what's going on, helps you understand exactly what you're doing, and be able to make the most clear choice for it. Because that's how I want to be. I want to know the stuff so that I can make the most clearest choice. I don't want any perspective or propaganda or any kind of bias or any other ulterior motives, influencing me. I just want all the information and to make a very clear decision. That's how I want to be. So that's how I'm on my podcast with you guys, because I guess I want to make it relatable. Okay, so the next question is, Nathan asks, hey brother, message from Australia, love the pod, 750 test C, 600 Primo, 400 Masteron, 5 IU growth hormone. Your thoughts? First thought is that whenever you use growth hormone, you got to use something for insulin sensitivity. And it's also very wise to use some T4 thyroxine to increase growth hormone related gene expression, which increases your response to growth hormone, because the conversion from T4 to T3 increases your response to growth hormone through gene-related mechanisms. And so growth hormone is very expensive. Thyroxine T4 is very cheap, usually less than 30 cents a tablet. And so taking like 150 micrograms of thyroxine would help you to get the most bang out of your buck from taking 5 IUs of growth hormone, which isn't cheap. And then the other thing is an insulin sensitivity supplement. So some bodybuilders use insulin, other bodybuilders use metformin, and other bodybuilders can use metformin and cinnamon, which are also good insulin sensitizing agents at 500 milligrams each. And then, at 750 test, 600 Primo, 400 Masteron, that sounds like a pretty good number there. 750 test is a nice number of tests to get like a good fullness. You can go double that and get more full, more big, more full, more strong and more hungry. But 750 is a good level where you have less water retention and not really much water retention at all if you're managing things correctly. And then 600 Primobolan, that's a good dose. That's an effective dose. And then 400 Masteron, that's also a good dose without, making you end up masturbating 7 times per day or something like that. 400, if you took 700 milligrams, then yeah, you're probably going to masturbate 7 times per day. It'd be probably every 100 milligrams of Masteron you take, that's however many more times you masturbate per day. So if you're taking 400 milligrams, you're probably going to count on it that you're going to have the urge 4 times a day to do something. Maybe not masturbate, but to do something 4 times per day. That sounds about right for 400 milligrams of Masteron. So yeah, you chose the right dosage there, not going higher. And the reason why I have to kind of like make a joke out of this stuff is because is anyone else on the internet doing that? Is anybody else telling you guys what Masteron really is? That it's a sex drive stimulant? That's its main purpose? I don't know, man. Things are weird. Anyways, You Decide asks, hey, my man, I bought your ebook and have listened to your entire podcast multiple times. I just want to get your thoughts on a bulking style I have planned for next year. 500 test, 300 equipoise, 100 deca. All right, that's going to be a very slow bulk. And it's going to work, but, like strength training programs that maybe you would have been using when you were natural and you might have had a hard time doing them are going to work on this cycle, and they're going to work good. So like good training programs that have, it's not just a bro split or something, but it has like reasons behind why it works and why you're doing what you're doing. You're going to be getting stronger. You're going to be doing more weights. You're going to be doing more sets, more reps with heavier weights. Okay, that kind of a program that a lot of people are intimidated by, those are going to start working very, very good when you take that kind of a steroid cycle. Or doing a bro split, you can gain some bit of muscle, and you can also have a great cosmetic effect while you're on the cycle with what you're using, looking good, looking unnatural, looking maybe a little bit alien while you're on the cycle. Because people should know that too, is that, we've talked about before that the effects of steroids are basically when the steroids are in your blood. So you got to really enjoy the cycles that you're on. You should enjoy them to the max when you're on them, and not be thinking about like, well, I'll enjoy the results of this cycle after it's done or something, but really enjoying it. Yeah, but this is not going to be any kind of like explosive gains or explosive growth cycle. We're not expecting to gain 20 pounds of muscle here, maybe 20 pounds of weight, but not muscle, and not expecting to be the Hulk after this cycle. All right. And last question for today, Lou asks, what's the best way to reduce water retention? So really, this is a question that comes down to carbohydrates intake. So carbohydrates are how we control how much water our body has in it. So now when I talk about carbohydrates and I talk about limiting it, carbohydrates have a neurotransmitter. Insulin has a neurotransmitter effect. Okay, it's an active agent in your CNS, and so whenever you eat carbohydrates, you get insulin released into your body, and your CNS feels that, works on you like a neurotransmitter, and so it is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, insulin. And so it calms you down. And so a lot of times what you'll hear about is like, eating low carbs makes me feel anxiety. You'll hear a statement like that, or I feel anxious when I don't have carbs, or I start sweating. I have some kind of CNS nervous system type of reaction, sweating, shaking, etc., from not eating carbs. And so it's very difficult because now you're talking about you're like talking about carbs and talking about how they're a powerful component of bodybuilding. Now people are going to have an emotional reaction when you talk about that because, you know, if they stop eating those carbs, if they reduce those carbs or something like that, they're going to have a hit to the way that they feel. Their emotions are going to be affected. So it's kind of like talking about, like, you know, somebody's using drugs or using smoking and talking about taking it away. And, you know, people have an emotional reaction and like, no, I don't want to do that. But this is one of those things where learning how carbs affect your body and at least experiencing this so that you know this and how they control water, how they control muscle size, strength, and performance. You've got to be able to take them in for out for short amounts of periods of time and put them back in to be able to experience that and see what they can do for you. So even just like carb cycling, you know, so having a no carb day or a very low carb day and then having a higher carb day. That can also help you to see this, but it's really a few days with low or no carbs, under 100 grams or under 50 grams of carbs. That's kind of like markers that you can use to kind of start getting more comfortable with it before you go to no carbs and you see the most extreme effects. Because when it comes to getting the water out of your skin, yeah, going 3 days with no carbs is going to completely remove any water whatsoever that is in your skin. You're going to look like you're on diuretics. And then you can eat back up on that day and keep the water intake low on that day, and you can fill your muscles back out. Because yeah, you know, going low carbs for 3 days in a row, it's gonna hurt the muscle fullness, and so the muscle pressing up against the skin. So that's kind of, you know, you can go low carbs for 3 days to get the water out of the skin, and then eat up with low water on the 4th day to help get a better appearance. But yeah, so like we talked about before, when you eat carbohydrates, your body produces insulin, which then communicates with the kidney and forces it to start holding sodium, which then the body, wow, I messed up the words. The body has to balance the salt with water. So it starts taking in water to balance that salt that's being retained. And so really, if you don't have that insulin in your bloodstream, the body stops holding the salt, which means the water then flows out of the body because now you have too much water and it's not appropriate with the low amount of salt that you have in your body. So your body has to flush that now in order to get the right balance. So manipulating carbohydrates is how you reduce water retention. Carbohydrate manipulation is the most effective way to reduce water retention. And then if you're using things like diuretics, well, they're working off of those same mechanisms. They're making the kidney stop holding electrolytes. And a lot of diuretics are working on the electrolyte sodium and making the kidney stop holding that. So working off that same natural mechanism that we're doing with the carbohydrates, but just manipulating it pharmaceutically.
For the guys interested in the Steroids podcast coaching services, there's the 1-hour phone call consultations. It's $59, and you call and have a private phone call with me. For the guys that have been listening to the podcast and have signed up to do that, and we've done that, it's been great getting to know you guys and happy to help you guys out. And then for the guys that are doing the daily text messaging based coaching, where we text message each other on WhatsApp, we talk about, it's personal training over WhatsApp, and we talk every day. That one's $99 a month, and then we get that daily contact between you and me. It's not just talking about only your cycle and taking care of side effects and keeping your gains going and stuff like that, but we also do training and diet together. So it's the full comprehensive service.